The year is 1998. Some pretty great anime aired that year. Trigun, Cardcaptor Sakura, Serial Experiments Lane, just to name a few. But that year also saw the premiere of this very obscure series, you've probably never heard of it, called Cowboy Bebop. The series was made by Sunrise, specifically by the team over at Studio 2, who at the time consisted of staff such as director Shinichiro Watanabe, screenwriter Keiko Nobumoto, and composer Yoko Kanno. I don't think I need to explain what Cowboy Bebop is to a majority of you watching because these days, the series is regarded as one of the greatest animes of all time. An exciting, genre-bending anime with a lot of big, sprawling story ideas, philosophical themes, and a kick-ass jazz-inspired soundtrack. But that wasn't always the case, because at the time of its release, it got off to a pretty rocky start. It first aired on TV Tokyo in the spring, however, due to the graphic nature of its content being deemed not suitable for its initial 6 PM time slot, that meant only half of what was produced actually made it to air. And even then, the episode order was disjointed and scattershot, concluding its brief one-core run with a cryptic clip show that ended with a message that read, "This is not the end. You will see the real Cowboy Bebop someday." In the midst of a dire and miserable situation, this message offered a glimmer of hope, which fortunately ended up being answered a few months later. In October that same year, it was picked up by cable network WoW, only this time, the series was aired in its entirety. At last, Cowboy Bebop, the work which became a new genre itself, would be able to show its full, unadulterated vision to the world for the very first time, and thus the show's legendary status was cemented. But despite the success and legacy it would leave behind, Studio 2 disbanded shortly after production had wrapped up, making Bebop the last project they would ever work on. However, while it marked the end for Studio 2, something else was brewing in its wake. Around the same time of Bebop's rebroadcast, several key staff members from Studio 2 would leave Sunrise to embark on a new creative endeavor. That being the founding of a brand new studio. A studio that would prioritize creative freedom above all else. A studio that would create fresh, original anime unlike anything that came before it. A studio that vowed to carry the spirit of Bebop and embody its ethos across every project they made. That studio was Studio Bones. And the rest, as they say, is history. While people like Watanabe, Nobumoto, and Kanno were all very integral to Bebop's production, as well as the many artists and animators who worked on the project too, I would say there is one other person who is just as instrumental in getting Bebop off the ground. And that person was producer Masahiko Minami. Minami started as a producer at Sunrise and worked on a variety of TV anime at the studio from the mid-80s to the late 90s, with one of those anime being, of course, Cowboy Bebop. While Bebop is a Sunrise property first and foremost, aside from the space setting, it had almost nothing in common with what the studio was known for at the time, primarily known for Gundam and other giant robot anime series. From what I gathered from interviews, it was an uphill battle for Minami, as he had to pull a lot of strings in order to convince the sponsors, mainly those over at Bandai, to greenlight the project so he can let Watanabe and company get on with their own thing. And even then, like we've discussed before, there were still problems when it came to its initial broadcast. Even though Bebop eventually came out on top in the end, Minami felt that the studio system that Sunrise operated under at the time couldn't properly accommodate or nurture creative-driven passion projects like it. So with that, Minami had left Sunrise, and he, alongside character designer Toshihiro Kawamoto and animation director Hiroshi Osaka, founded Bones and took about a dozen or so freelance animators with them. Minami would then be appointed as the studio's president, and after 25 years under his supervision, Bones have propelled themselves to the forefront of anime greatness. But what is their secret? Well, that's what we're going to find out. Diagwit everyone, I'm IrishAnimeFan, and in this video, I'm going to explain what makes Bones so great, what makes them stand out from every other animation studio in Japan, and why they are still thriving in that industry even after all this time. Also, some of the points I make in this video were taken from and inspired by the 4-part documentary series Bones 25 Dreaming Forward. This series looks back at the studio's history, explores their creative approach towards anime production, and discusses what the future holds for them. I highly recommend you check this documentary out if you want to learn more about what makes Bones so special. Plus, it also contains interviews from various people who have worked with them over the years, from staff members and industry professionals to some of the manga authors who have been fortunate enough to have their work adapted into anime by them. That documentary and other sources I pulled from will be linked in the description below. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Across Bones' 25-year history, they have produced an extensive body of work consisting of 41 TV series and 26 feature films, among other things. Currently, Bones is made up of 5 smaller studios, inspired by Sunrise's own production model, and each of them have their own projects that they work on. Studio A is led by Naoki Amano, whose titles includes the likes of Wolf's Rain, Noragami, and Carol and Tuesday. Studio B, whose lead producer is not disclosed for whatever reason, is known for Eureka 7, Space Dandy, and Mob Psycho 100. Studio C, led by Yoshihiro Oyabu, is known for making the original Fullmetal Alchemist series, Ouran High School Host Club, and have been exclusively working on the My Hero Academia anime since 2017. Studio D, led by Mari Suzuki, produced Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and is currently the main home of Bungo Stray Dogs. Finally, Studio E, which is the newest studio out of the bunch, is led by Makoto Watanabe, whose only credits so far include the Eureka 7 film trilogy and Metallic Rouge, the studio's 25th anniversary project. But regardless of what project each studio is working on at the time, they all present a series of challenges they must overcome. Despite expanding and upgrading their production model over the years, these challenges still persist even to this day. Let's start with their original series. Considering that a show as defiant as Cowboy Bebop served as the genesis for Bones, it makes a lot of sense why they would greatly emphasize their original projects. But while original anime is certainly more enticing and appealing to a creator, it is often a high-risk venture for the studio to undertake. This was especially apparent in the beginning when Bones only consisted of a one-room rental studio by the time they were working on their first original anime, which was 2000's Hero War Chronicles. The anime, from what I understand, was plagued with financial issues, and the only reason they ended up surviving in the end was because Bones had still maintained a good solid relationship with Sunrise, who enlisted their help to get Bones off the ground. But while creating original anime is one of Bones' main objectives, there's no guarantee that it'll make the studio any money. So the route that Bones takes in order to fund these original projects is to make adaptations. Now, I am not saying that adaptations are inherently less creative than original anime. That is absolutely not the case. While you do get adaptations that stay pretty faithful to the original source material, part of the fun that comes with adaptations is by making changes to it, within reason of course, that gives the audience a brand new experience with a familiar work. And that is exactly the kind of adaptations Bones makes, and as a result, they have produced some phenomenal anime adaptations over the years. Their big break for them as a studio came in 2003, when they made their first stab at Fullmetal Alchemist, and have since made similar splashes in the community with heavy hitters like Bungo Stray Dogs, Mob Psycho 100, and My Hero Academia, all airing their first seasons in 2016. But adaptations also came with their own set of obstacles, with one prominent example being what happened to FMA03. Director Seiji Mizushima had pitched it as an anime series that would last for 4 cours, when only 2 volumes of the manga were published at the time. Their solution to this problem was to consciously take the story in a brand new direction, separate and independent from the original manga, treating the adaptation like an original anime of its own. While Bones have definitely taken a more cautious approach to their adaptations in recent years, they are not compromised in their creativity because they still continue to insert scenes that are exclusive to the anime in their adaptations. However, one thing Bones has done to alleviate the strain that comes with these challenges is establishing a sense of trust. Entertainment is a collaborative effort after all, and everybody needs to be on the same page when creating anything. But what makes Bones a unique entity in this field is that Minami allows total creative freedom for its creators to do whatever they want, as long as it produces something interesting. They are there for the creators every step of the way, while also ensuring that these projects get made on time and have a consistent level of quality to them. I mentioned earlier that their original anime are usually a high-risk venture. But with high risk comes high reward, and Bones have definitely had shows that have certainly felt rewarding to make, both creatively and financially. I doubt any other studio would be so brave enough to greenlight an anime that is as cerebral and evocative as Keiko Nobumoto's Wolf Rain, or Shinichiro Watanabe's wildly outlandish Space Dandy, or Eureka 7 with its eclectic mix of styles and subcultures that differentiates it from any other mecha anime at the time. Speaking of which, despite wanting to branch away, it's clear that Bones still has a lot of respect for Sunrise, and another way they convey that respect is by carrying the torch for them in terms of creating original mecha anime. They've kept the genre's flame alive by injecting new ideas into them. This is observed in the mystical sci-fi fantasy elements seen in RahXephon, or the high school setting in Star Driver. It's also what makes Metallic Rouge feel like a true celebration of everything that Bones stands for, because it infuses its mecha elements with a tokusatsu flair and a techno-noir setting and aesthetic. And it's that combination of influences which made it stand out in its season. Likewise with their adaptations, the director works closely alongside the original manga author to ensure that not only does the anime meet their expectations, but also the fans as well. In a lot of ways, working on original anime has informed the way they work on adaptations, because they are able to liaise with the original manga author in pretty much the same way as they would with a director or a screenwriter. Despite FMA03 taking the story in a drastically different direction, it was the blessing that Hiromu Arakawa gave to director Seiji Mizushima and the rest of the team at Studio C that led to the series still becoming incredibly popular worldwide. And because of that, they were even privileged enough to be entrusted with making Brotherhood, this time being a more straightforward and faithful adaptation of its source material. But not only do their adaptations enhance the source material, but can also elevate them as well. This can be seen in Mob Psycho 100, where they were able to transform one simple artwork in the manga into a visual spectacle that only the animators of Bones can provide. Another aspect that sets Bones apart from their contemporaries is their internationally minded approach to anime production and distribution. While most anime studios tend to target the domestic audience in Japan, it was clear from the beginning that Bones would not settle for just that. They have made their fair share of anime that have appealed to especially Western and overseas audiences, to the point where you could argue that Bones were one of the first studios to capitalize on the West's growing interest in anime over the last couple of decades. Bones anime were always a staple on programming blocks like Adult Swim and Toonami, which is something that they have recognized themselves. So much so, in fact, that in 2014, Space Dandy had premiered on Toonami in the US one day before Japan, with a full English dub and everything, which was unprecedented at the time. But they've also been at the forefront of adopting and even pioneering brand new ways for anime to tap into that global market. An example of a series that exemplifies that is Zammed Lost Memories. Zammed was an original ONA series that Bones developed with Sony that was released in 2008 to coincide with the launch of the PlayStation Network's video download service. It proved to be a massive hit, with its first episode being the most downloaded video on the service the week of its release. To put that into perspective, Netflix had just launched their streaming service the year prior, long before they had established their presence as the streaming giant that they are today. Looking back on this now, while it was on a smaller and more niche scale to what we would see in the years to come, at the time it was still kind of revolutionary, and I would argue that Bones were ahead of their time in this respect. Though speaking of Netflix, in 2018, Bones partnered with the streaming giant to bring us the original series Ico Incarnation. This is significant because this was around the same time that Netflix had also begun investing in anime as something to not only increase their own viewer base, but to also reach audiences around the world who had likely never had watched anime before. Since then, they have continued to collaborate with Netflix to bring us more projects, like with 2021's Super Crooks and 2024's Time Patrol Bon. The increased budgets and the extended episode lengths that come with streaming services have allowed the creators of these series more creative freedom than what was allowed for them if they had brought these IPs to standard broadcast television. It's this distribution model that has contributed to anime's growing success in Japan and becoming more widely accepted into the mainstream. And it's also this willingness that Bones have to tap into that global market that has contributed to their success as a studio. There's a reason why I started this video off by talking about Cowboy Bebop. To put it simply, without Bebop, there would be no Bones. And that also kind of applies to me personally, because not only have they made some of my all-time favorite anime series, but I can't really imagine what my life would be like without them. FMA03, Soul Eater, and Ouran High School Host Club, in that order, were some of the first anime that I had ever watched, and if I had not gone out of my way to seek those series out, then there's a strong chance that this video, this entire YouTube channel, and probably my love for anime would never have existed at all. Their anime have had such a formative role in developing my own personal taste for anime and what I value most in this medium. That being high quality animation projects, colorful ensemble casts, and incredible animation that is fostered in, if Minami's statement is true, a relatively healthy working environment with a full paid salary. I'll admit, they may not strike gold every single time, but I have always admired and respected them for placing their trust in directors and animators to create anime that, apart from Kyoto Animation, no other anime studio is willing to make. The anime industry has changed dramatically over the last 25 years, and yet, despite these recent developments, Bones have remained true to their philosophy and continues to put it into practice, and in the process, they have even influenced the industry that they reside in. Minami was asked recently in an interview with Game Rant about Bones and why they still continue to stick around after 25 years, to which he replied, "We wanted the studio to be a place where new ideas and young ideas could be valued. That is something that has really allowed our studio to continue to grow in the way it has. With Hiroshi Osaka's tragic passing in 2007, and the two surviving founding members getting up there in age, the Bones that we have known for the last 25 years is eventually going to end. With that in mind, it's now more important than ever for Bones to guide, nurture, and train up the young talent so that they can one day take up the mantle and continue the legacy that was set out by Cowboy Bebop all those years ago. In other words, they're gonna carry that weight. Thank you for watching the video. What is your favorite anime made by Bones? Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, hit that like button, share the video around, and make sure you subscribe if you want to see more from me in the future. And hell, if this video does well enough, I might make a video on every single Bones anime ever made. Although now that I'm saying that out loud, it does sound like a lot of work. I may need to reconsider. That's all from me. I've been IrishAnimeFan, and until next time, Slán.